Welcome to Leading with Curiosity. Command and control leadership is dead. We interview leaders, entrepreneurs, and executive coaches challenging old paradigms and fostering cutting-edge leadership. Here's your host, certified executive coach, Nate Leslie.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to the show. When it comes to large-scale challenges, my next guest leans in. He's the founder of the SupportingLines Institute, a CPA, and a former CFO. He's a master executive coach and a yoga instructor. Leading a sales team that helped a global helicopter company double sales to 1.6 billion is just one of many business success stories that always catches my attention. While many executive coaches build their practice around serving individual clients, Jeff Smith's SupportingLines mission is to help millions of people have a better human experience at work. Today, we're going to dive into the data-driven approach to leadership that places the SupportingLines Institute in a unique position to help leaders understand their behaviors and its impact on a high-performance culture. Jeff, welcome to Leading with Curiosity.
All right, very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Let's just jump into, the little bit of the background of how you went from being a corporate executive, kind of throwing in the towel, to launching SupportingLines Institute.
Yeah, I like to call it the healthiest midlife crisis ever. Perhaps I think it's some days I know exactly how I got here, and other days I kind of don't have a clue. I think the breadcrumbs, if you will, if I go back, were really around having occasion during my career to work with amazing leaders, and also having occasion to work with amazingly not so good leaders. Learned a lot from both. And I think one of the things I was trying to do when I was a CFO and then the COO at Ep.5, which is a tech company that recently got acquired by Salesforce, we were really focused on, trying to achieve big things, but also living values and really being focused on how we treated each other. And so one of the things that I got feedback on there, and I think this is really the part of the journey where I'd started, much more of a yoga practice, and I got way deeper into less focused on achievement and I guess my own personal achievement, and more focused on the team. And I guess the sea change that had in terms of how people related to me, what people shared with me, how I was able to help people, I'd never experienced that. So there was some sort of deepening in the relationships that I was having, and just learned a lot about what I needed to do better and what was really effective as a leader, and just the importance of the connection with others. But I think the big thing was when I got my coaching certification in 2017. I know we both went through, the Royal Roads program. It's amazing.
Yeah.
That program was really a galvanizing event for me. It really took all of this to another level. And so not only was I focused on my own leadership development, I was really focused on helping other people be better leaders. And so that started a journey of trying to create training and materials and other things. And eventually I had a system that we were using with success that I was able to replicate that success with other organizations. And then eventually, Igor, the CEO, and I had a conversation about, it's time to go do this, because clearly this is your life's work. So,
wow.
Yeah, it actually wasn't as much a big decision moment. It was just very clear that this was the path that was laid out, and I needed to go do it. So it was like my purpose found me.
That's awesome. I imagine, well, you shared Railroads program with me, so thank you for introducing that program to me, Jeff. And gosh, how many alumni realize in that experience, probably in the second day, maybe the first day, maybe the fifth month, I don't know, oh, this doesn't have to be about me. What if I could make this about being in service of others? And that's what I'm hearing from you right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what it's funny. I was talking to my yoga instructor, amazing teacher named Sina Shalbaf, and we were talking recently about the fact that I wasn't doing as much daily practice because I'm doing other things. I'm, running around with my kid, or I'm playing tennis and doing other physical things. And he said, your work is yoga. When you think about it, the 8 limbs of yoga, they are all about service. And the first 2 limbs of yoga are actually not about the stretchy pants and those sorts of things. That's good. We like that. But the first 2 are actually more about principles and practices. They're about, the code of ethics that you live, and service is right at the center of that. And so I think, yeah, that was really the thing. Once you get a taste of how powerful it is to be able to be of service to others in the line of work that we do as coaches, it's kind of no going back.
You know what? I've asked you, for those of us who know you, it comes as an immediate surprise a little bit, the yoga instructor, simply because I only know 1 or 2 humans that can get more done in a day than you. And I know, taking time to focus on your yoga practice was very intentional. Why don't you just fill us in a bit on that journey?
Well, it's really interesting. Actually, it came out of I had one work experience that was not super positive, and I worked with a leader where things went in a very different direction than I had expected and hoped. And I think this is where they say that, you learn from leaders who are great, but you really learn from ones who aren't,
Yeah.
or from situations. And so I believe that leaders at their core are still great people, but the behaviors that you might get in a certain situation or a set of circumstances can be horrendous. And so that I did experience that. And I actually felt like the fiber of my being coming apart. Like it was really that profound and it was that tangible because I left the job without having anything to go to. And my wife Amanda said to me at the time, like what are you going to do if you quit? Like what's going to happen? I'm like, I'm afraid of what's going to happen if I stay.
Wow.
And I think the most powerful thing about that, and this is one of these moments where someone's like, I'm not saying this to be dramatic, but it is, it's going to be dramatic. I had a friend 3 weeks later that died of, he was 47 and he died of a massive heart attack. And I was just like I get chills even thinking about it because I that was the words I used. I feel like something really that powerful is going to happen. And so when we think about the impact of poor leadership on people, like I have, I have those other coaches that, I both know that sometimes they give me coaching that my particular assessment of a leader or something is like overly harsh or critical, but like that's where it's coming from. I can feel it. Like I know what poor leadership does to humans
Wow.
because I've felt it.
Yeah.
I've been there, and I feel like I might have been within weeks myself of having like, yeah, essentially a breakdown. Like I think I was there. Which so
Wow.
when you have that experience and then you pair that with the positive side, which is you feel the service and you see it with others, it just becomes what you do. And so I think that's really back to the yoga question. Like that's what yoga is. It's like you can do the stuff on the mat, and so making time for that really helped me recover from this period where like I really felt like I was coming apart. So it made it because of the situation, because I practiced at that point like every single day for probably a year and a half, it just became part of who I am, not just something I did. That was the shift for me. It wasn't, and that's where my teacher is right. Like he's very seen as a very smart person, and he said the service that you're living in your daily life right now, that is what yoga is. That's what it's for, right?
I just made a connection about that with you where it's not about getting a drop-in pass somewhere. You lean in hard to things. You're leaning into
Yeah.
This is going to shift my way of being, the way I'm going to show up as a leader, as a dad, as a husband, and I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And hence the teacher training and the deep dive. So let's shift gears to leadership effectiveness. What's a really effective leader to you?
Well, I mean, I think everything we just talked about is a great segue. I think that we look at two things in high performance leadership. All of our stuff is data driven. I will break from my normal tradition today. I won't pull out like a massive spreadsheet of numbers, which I probably usually do.
Come on.
Your listeners will be very we can do like a storybook read along of spreadsheets, but your listeners would love that.
They would.
Nate's podcast was great until that last episode with that Jeff guy.
Yeah.
So the effective leadership is both really simple and very challenging. So we talk about the softer skills, like they should be called the harder skills because they're the harder ones to do, but we know we need to do them. And so the big thing is we want to get teams aligned around some sort of big vision that everyone can get inspired by. It's very meaningful. And then we want to go do it. So we want to achieve critical goals. And the other thing is it's critically important to focus on the human experience of work. And so this is where, to me, yoga is something I'd weave back into that because I think I learned a lot about the importance of the human experience of work by doing yoga. I actually think my yoga practice, like it's in me now. It's not like something I would go do, to your point. I think the realization that the human experience of achievement is what helped me make the shift from a manager to a true leader. And I think that journey is ongoing. By no means, I think I'm very good at knowing what leaders should do. And sometimes I don't do that myself, but it's hard to, walk your own talk. But I think an effective leader is able to get people focused and rallied around a common vision and that they can go achieve. And at the same time they're doing it, they're having a hell of a lot of fun and a great human experience.
Right on.
Yeah.
We've talked sometimes about going from doing the work to leading a team is like playing two different sports.
Totally.
Unpack that for us.
Well, it's really interesting, and I have a number of coaches that that I've talked to over the years, and leaders as well that strongly believe this, that you get promoted. So if you're a a software engineer. You're really amazing at making code. It's always bug free. You're super innovative. You can make amazing software applications. And now you're in charge of the team, which has absolutely nothing to do with any of that.
Yeah.
You're amazing at selling, right? So you're a salesperson, crush your number. You're doing so great all the time. Make club, President's Club. You're getting all the bonuses and the prizes, everything else. Now you got to run the team. Well, what does that have to do with sales? Kind of nothing. So I think that it does help to have technical expertise. Like clearly, I mean, you have a hockey background, right? Clearly, if you have a hockey coach that has played some, similar level of hockey, that is going to be useful. But it, in many ways, is less important than focusing on the human experience of people on that team. And so, yes, you want to achieve a goal, but you want to have fun doing it, because the reality is, in the NHL, 1/32, 1 out of 32 teams wins every year, right? So the rest of them, let's hope they at least have a great experience, because they didn't win the ultimate prize. And so when you look at it that way, it's like, yeah, like if you're an individual contributor that then gets promoted to run your team, that's hard enough. But most people's experience, and I would say this is like, I don't have exact data on this one, but I'd say it's like really most, like the vast majority of people go into a people manager role and they have never had training. And so for us, it's like, yeah, it's kind of like you're playing baseball and then all of a sudden you're actually a hockey coach and you've never even seen the sport, let alone, right? And so it's really important to start the work to prepare people to be people managers from day one. So we believe everybody's a leader. So if you're going to do something on how to give feedback or how to have an amazing one-on-one, train everybody. Don't just train your leaders. It's too late when someone's there. They got too much to learn.
Yeah. So many small business owners who have grown something from small to awesome have been so busy doing that thing that they're relying on stuff from when they were teenagers about, what a captain of a team did. That's their kind of leadership model, right? And of course, larger organizations hopefully have more programs and opportunities in place, but it's fascinating for you and I when we talk with coach clients or work with teams, how little formal training they've had, going from volleyball player to hockey player, going from coder to leading coders. I'm reminded of John Cooper, Stanley Cup winning coach in Tampa, who was a lacrosse player and then a lawyer, and said, but I've got Steve Stamkos and guys like him in the dressing room. Why don't I ask them what we should do on the power play?
Yeah, right.
Let's explore your definition of insanity, of the common practice of many leaders.
Yeah, I think I think trying to do, the classic definition of doing the same stuff over and over and expecting a different result, right? I think if you look at leadership, I think people know deep down when they're not nailing it. Like you feel it, like you feel that you're not connecting with your team, or you get that someone's not happy or whatever. So I think that there's two variants of this. One is that you're trying to have a one-on-one the same way, and you're trying to do it and it's just never working, but you never change it. And the other one, I saw this stat yesterday. I was doing some work on our e-learning platform, like updating some of the videos, and there was a stat that kind of blew my mind. So most leaders believe that giving negative feedback is more important than giving positive feedback. Obviously, as you can expect, employees would say the opposite, which is I'd like a blend of feedback, but positive feedback is more impactful.
Yeah.
So leaders have that backwards. Now, notwithstanding the fact that leaders believe that negative feedback is more important, 20% of leaders don't give negative feedback. They just avoid it. So that's the other definition of insanity. So people know feedback's important. Leaders think, first of all, that it's negative feedback that's the most important. It might be the most impactful, but it's not the most important. But 20% of leaders don't give negative feedback, and almost 40% don't give any recognition, which is positive feedback, at all, zero, ever, because they're uncomfortable with it. So I think the other thing is that if you're sensing that either you're trying something and it's not working, or you're uncomfortable even trying it, so you're not doing it, but you know it's probably important, at some point that is the definition of insanity. Because what our research shows is that sort of false choice leaders have between, okay, well, we can't do employee experience stuff right now because we need to achieve goals. That actually isn't a thing. So achieving goals and the human experience, like at the highest level your team can possibly do, they're the same thing. They're actually one and the same. Like our stuff shows that you can't separate the achievement of critical goals from a human experience. Like You only get your highest performance when you have both.
Right on. Little segue opportunity there to explore at a higher level the HPI, High Performance Index at Supporting Lines Institute, that we use with clients and teams. Just a little bit about what that is.
Well, it's interesting. That is, now what I know it is an assessment that is from an academic validity and reliability and all these sort of statistical things that show that an assessment is really strong. It's the strongest one we've ever seen, and it's the strongest one that the researchers that we work with at Adelaide University have ever seen. So it's a super powerful assessment that looks at all aspects of culture, both achieving critical goals and then also the human experience. Now, the human experience work really has two pieces. There's big academic terms for it, but I'll just use the common language. So we're achieving critical goals is one part. Within the human experience, it's you're having a positive, fulfilling experience of your work, and you've got an environment in which you can thrive. That's kind of it. And so what our research has shown, like unequivocally, is that we measure all of that all at once. So what's really cool is that a lot of times people will run like an engagement survey or a psych safety survey or a D&I, like a diversity and inclusion survey, or a return to work COVID survey. Like there's all these different surveys on what we can do, but they're almost always done in isolation. So rather than being like a point solution, we believe what we have is a scoreboard to look at what is the quality of your culture. And it's not just like lagging indicators to go, how are we doing? It's also, there's elements in here that we've proven are leading indicators and that they actually predict what performance will look like. And so we not only have we connected to things like engagement and psychological safety, diversity and inclusion, we've also connected to people's performance measures, which is, that's the achieving goals part. And so we just had some data this week where, if you are, in a fashion retailer, the quality of the visual merchandise displays that that an associate would put up is directly connected to the degree to which they believe, right? They believe in and inspired by the vision of the organization. So I'll just say that again, because that was a lot. If you believe in the vision and you're inspired by the vision of the organization, you're more likely to set up an inspiring retail display for customers in the store. I mean, some of this stuff, it just makes so much sense when you get the information back. But what we're able to do with HPI is not only just assess the culture, but also look at how it relates to performance. So what differentiates performance within your organization? So it's just, frankly, we already know it's super powerful, and I think we're still learning. Like we're still learning. It seems to reach into areas that we never even expected.
It seems to keep getting proved. Is that English? I'm not sure, but
yeah,
we'll go with it. You just mentioned something, and I know what you're talking about. It's connected to engagement surveys. It's connected to psychological safety. What I love about your work, Jeff, is by that you mean you've got data scientists and statisticians who are trained at a university level to compare, to connect and correlate your work to well-known work that is globally accepted, that have millions of people take it, and so every time more and more people take it, you make sure that it's more and more statistically relevant. Is that a layman's way to describe what we're doing, right?
Yeah, it's like, you want to know that the assessment you have is measuring what you think it measures, and that's good. And then reliability means that you can compare it. So when you get your data, you can compare it to another organization. And so it's amazing. Like the bar to say that something is reliable is pretty low, but in our case, the level of reliability we have actually is stronger than these really powerful instruments that we, assessed our stuff against to test its validity. And so, the next area I want to go, like, I'll ask you this question, like, here's one of our hypotheses. How related do you think the culture is of an organization to a decision for someone to go on stress leave?
Oh, I heard it yesterday with the Roy Group in Victoria, that the culture of an organization is determined by the worst behaviors that the leader tolerates. So if the culture is related to the lowest bar that the leader sets, that I would say there is a very high correlation between, if I heard your question correctly, between stress leave and culture.
So that's where we're going next. We're looking at, we're connecting our stuff to, we're looking at how elements of high performance culture relate to resilience. And the other area we're going is we're going to go right into what creates anxiety. And then working with one of our partners, we're going to be able to connect it as well to essentially health outcomes like disease and things. And so we've seen, there's research that already shows that stress in certain settings does not only create negative health outcomes, but also that it does appear that you can pass on your stress genetically, which is like mind blowing. So what we believe is that, and this is a very strongly educated hypothesis that I'm in the process of proving. I believe that if you're a really crappy leader, right, really like a leader that's really creating a challenging environment for your people, creating incredible stress, not only will you impact their health, wellness, their being, research seems to indicate, and the area of research is called epigenetics, it appears that the people that are super stressed out because of your poor leadership can actually pass that on to their children.
Jesus.
Think about that. So poor leadership may not be a single generational issue. And there's a whole body of research. There's a book called Altered Traits by Daniel Goleman, and Richard Davidson, who are the kind of, the gurus behind emotional intelligence and some other things. And so remember the Montreal ice storm, right? Like, was it like, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago? They've done longitudinal research that has shown that babies born during the ice storm are 30 to 40% more likely to have certain genetic related health issues as compared to their siblings. And the only differentiator they can find is the stress of the mother during childbirth. Think about that. So if you're a stressed out, if you're a pregnant, a pregnant woman who is dealing with an incredibly stressful workplace situation, their research seems to indicate that it is possible that when your baby is born and you are highly stressed, that work stress, you're going to pass it to your kid. That's crazy. And so this is an area where I'd like to get a little more data. This is like longitudinal stuff, so we would have to leverage the research of others. But it makes sense to me that that this workplaces with that level of stress, that it has impacts way beyond what we even think about, way beyond engagement surveys and other things. Like I think we talk about the human experience for millions of people. Like this is a much bigger game, I think, than people realize. And it starts with something as simple as, let's go take the pulse of how your team's doing. And then
it comes,
ramifications.
Geez, those are large scale problems. As I mentioned in the intro, you lean in and they come back to effective leadership is about living the values of the organization and treating people like humans and holding them accountable. Some clients that sort of resist change sometimes feel like, well, all this stuff just lets everybody off the hook. And it's not about that at all. It's about like, you can treat people like humans and hold them accountable at the same time quite easily. So these large scale problems really come back to how humans treat humans.
Yeah, and it comes back to everybody being a leader, because in our assessment, as you know, half of it is things that leaders can do. I actually think that leaders can't do it all. And we know this is true. Like, if you think about your experience on a hockey team, if you have an amazing coach with terrible teammates, that's going to be an issue. And if you have terrible teammates with an awesome coach, that's going to be an issue. So what our research shows is that a lot of engagement surveys just look at what leaders need to do, and we believe that's half of the picture. And so a lot of this, in this concept of like accountability, is a good example. Yes, a leader needs to hold their team accountable and set the conditions for accountability, but a culture of accountability requires everybody to be holding everybody accountable. So the great thing about this too is there's two really great things. The first thing is, yes, so some people are intimidated by, well, what if I get bad results? And it's like, well, you already have them. Everybody else is already talking about it in your organization. Wouldn't you like to join the conversation, right? They're already talking about it. They're already talking about your leadership. Wouldn't you like some clues on what you could do, what you could do differently? And the other thing is that when you get the data, you also, as the leader, aren't solely responsible to have to go do this. So it's actually even better than letting people off the hook. We're kind of putting them on the hook to follow that sort of phraseology, because we're saying to the employees, this is what I can do myself as the leader of the team, and I'm going to commit to doing that. But these are things you need to do. Like, you need to be part of building a culture here too. But the leader can't force culture. Like, I can't go to say everyone and say, okay, from tomorrow, our culture is going to be amazing. Got it? Like, it's not the way it works.
Yeah.
So culture is everybody. So everybody needs to do their part.
That's awesome. God, the connections of the HPI, when I try to debrief with a client or share with a friend or talk to an organization, it's so simply the cheat sheet to leadership that if I had this in the start of my journey on the side of my desk, like we carry it now, if I was a 6 out of 6 and my team was a 6 out of 6 in these 36 categories, this would be an awesome place to work. I wouldn't want to leave. I'd be thriving. I'd be developing. It can go as large scale as you want. And then it comes back to here's the things that we can do. And there's so many other great assessments out there that are often connected to personality traits, which are really useful. And I've learned a ton from them. What hooked me early when you shared this with me is this is about the team. This is about the organization. This is about what everybody's doing. And what you just said there, what I have influence of as a leader and what we need to hold people accountable for. They can't just say, hey,
right,
I got a bad leader. No, they have an opportunity to influence each other as well. Let's kind of move towards wrapping it up with the idea that despite the lack of training that many of us have had over the years coming up through the ranks, getting hired into roles, one day you're playing volleyball, the next you're asked to play hockey. Despite all that, a lot of people are doing a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, I mean, there are other organizations that like to put out data saying that, the world is disengaged and all leaders are terrible and whatever. And I don't think that's true. I think what we see is that most leaders do want to be good leaders. I think it's a very small percentage of the population that they truly don't want to be a good leader. I don't think that person really exists. And if they do, they probably aren't someone you'd hire anyway. So most people want to be a good leader. I think it can be quite off-putting for people, especially like where personality is important is like if you're uncomfortable being in front of a big group or like being on public display and you go from like coding or selling or whatever in your world, and then all of a sudden you get this whole team of people looking at you to go, okay, what do we do next? You're like, I don't know. I don't know. Right. And so I think that the big thing for me is just embrace the fact that you've got your own style, you've got your own personality, you got your own reactive tendencies. Those are things that are going to influence the way you show up. So you talk about the cheat sheet to leadership, right? You want to help teams align, you want to help people collaborate, you want to help people grow. Those are the basics. Your personality and reactive tendencies can undermine that. In the case of reactive tendencies, and in your personality, that's your own flair, that you're going to do it your own way, and that's fine. But I think the big thing for people is, one of the data points I will share is if you get a 360 review and the scores aren't great.
Yeah.
There's a 90% relationship, 90, between living the values of the organization and your high performance index leadership 360 score. And here's what's most incredible. It doesn't even matter if the organization has defined values. Just think about that. So what that means is when we go out, we say, oh, we got to go create our values. Nope, you don't actually. What you need to do is co-discover them with employees. Because if you have 200 people, you have 200 definitions of your values.
Right.
So people already have values, even if you haven't done it. And they are holding you accountable to these kind of universal truths of what they think good leadership is. So the most important thing is if you got defined values, live them. And if you don't have defined values, get them, because what you definitely want to know is that if you know that 90%, like think about this, picture yourself being, CEO of 100 people and you don't have defined values, but you know that 90% of your score is going to be related to it. Like in terms of your score on a 360 is going to be related to it. Wouldn't it be important to know what people are thinking about when they're assessing you on the values? Wouldn't it be good if they were a common set of values, right? So this is why it's so important to define values. But then if you want to think about what are the core things that we want to do as leaders, definitely have a vision. Where's the company going? Get people inspired in it. And as you do it, live the values on the website. And if you don't have values, go to a company you admire and look at their values and live those, because chances are you're going to be on the right track.
So we're working with a client where lots of change has been happening, and it would be easy to say, well, we don't have values, and this is a great question. We don't have values clearly defined because the company's coming together, and I'm not really sure what to do. And you're saying identify values that you admire and share it with your team and make it very obvious. Is that tell me a bit more about like that that leader who is leading a small team and they're a bit confused about what values you're talking about? Just maybe go over that again.
Yeah, so if you look at the organizational values, they're going to be things that are like universal truths, right? So it's going to be treat people with respect. We want to have communication, teamwork, transparency, all these sorts of things. There's like 50 you can pick from or more. So you want to pick the ones that most identify. Now, the reality is if you go through a big organizational process and define 4 values, right? Chances are 1 or 2 of those is going to resonate with your team more anyway. So if you have organizational values, it's an amazing conversation with your team, your direct reports, to say, which values do we think are the most important? Because that's okay. It doesn't, you can label them all, but some of them are importanter. I think that's a word too.
You've
the
made
other
it a
thing
word,
is
and it's good.
I think it is now.
Yeah.
We just got to use it a couple of times, and then like Merriam-Webster will pick it up. The other thing that is really exciting is that people already have a definition of values. Right? So every employee in your team, if you say to them, what are the values in leadership, they can answer that, whether or not you put it on the website. And the key thing here is that if you have that conversation, like if your team is giving you a 360, there's going to be like a 90% correlation with how they assess you and on the values and how they assess you on all 36 dimensions of high performance leadership that we use, right? The cheat sheet that you talk about. So the cool thing is if you have a conversation with your team before, you could do a couple things. You could talk about what values are important to you, but what's even more powerful, because it comes back to, again, we all share culture, we all co-create culture, ask them what they think the values are. And in fact, that's what we just did with the company that you're mentioning, is we asked their employees. We sent out something called a Thought Exchange, which is an amazing, another one of our partners, amazing platform that lets you quickly distill information from large groups of people. So we asked over 200 people, what do you think? What are the 2 or 3 things that you think are the values of the organization? And then we got a ton of data back. We were able to distill that down and then create a set of 4 values working with their senior leadership team. But we made sure we picked up wording from the employees. Nice. And so you don't create values. You need to go figure out what they already are and then see where you need to shape them. So yes, executives can play a role in the final wording and everything else. But if you're a leadership team and you think you can just in isolation make a set of values and put it on the website, I don't think that's the way it works. I think you need to, it's a shared thing.
Yeah. Right on. Hey, let's just do this every often.
Sure.
Let's in the spirit of listeners have something else to do today.
Yeah.
We could talk for hours, and we often do. So let's just do it another time, and we'll share it in another episode. Jeff, it's I learn every time we connect, making notes here, and we are lucky to have your leadership, and it's just fun being a part of this and watching it grow. And your take on it is very large and very practical all at the same time. Thanks for sharing.
No, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me, and we really appreciate having you in our community as well. So thanks for the work you're doing, and good luck with the podcast.
Thanks for listening to Leading with Curiosity. Please share, follow, and rate the show so that other leaders can make positive change in the world. Connect with Nate at nateleslie.ca. And remember, the brain behaves very differently when encouraged to think rather than told to listen.